youth unemployment in countries like Greece, 56 in countries like Spain. Many people are just stuck. We understand that the option we propose to you is not ideal in many ways, but that is still better than the status quo, and that it allows for an escape for people who have no other options and who have no future unless we do this. So what do we understand by lowering labor standards? We think the examples given give a very intuitive answer as to what it means, but generally what we're standing for is lowering all kinds of regulations and having more consent and simply whatever contract you write based, employment standards, right? So the thing is, obviously we think that it should be proportional to the problem. So if youth unemployment is a huge issue, obviously we lower the standards more, whereas if it's a minor issue, we don't do it as much, right? So also, as we define youth, probably below 25 years, but it depends country from country how the definition works. So I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about the problem itself and why there's no other option. I'm going to talk about what changes for youth, and how, thirdly, how we actually influence employers in a good way. So the problem. We think not having work protections is not ideal, and we understand that, but ultimately it's still preferable. Because what we have in the status quo is a vicious cycle that keeps repeating and repeating. Because some people are not working in the countries like Spain and Greece for 2 years now. They have left university, they have studied, done some unpaid internships, and they cannot get work, and what they have in their CV is a whole of 2 years, which no employer is going to see as desirable, right? No one wants to hire these people, no one will want to hire these people unless we can get them out of this situation. There is no way for them to get experience in a real-life working situation. And we think that once they get that experience, even if it is not on the best of terms, then they can negotiate better contracts, and then if it globally becomes better, we can also raise the standards then again. So, how does this change the situation? Firstly, the issue of why youth is not hired is generally not their education. Most of these people are actually educated, have gone to university, but the problem is that they lack experience, right? And unpaid internships are simply not an option when you have to start to make a living. Even if that means making a really bad living, we think that it's still better than staying at home for 2 years and absolutely without any options at all, right? And we think that we can incentivize employers to hire young people instead of hiring people who are older. We think there's an unfair advantage that older people get because of things like perception of them in society as more mature and experienced and all those things, but also simple objective facts like actual experience, right? And we think that they have an inherent advantage. Second reason why youth don't get jobs is generally this public perception, especially in these countries, that they are not for these jobs, right? That they have absolutely no understanding, that they're not, responsible, all those things. And it's reinforced through the status quo again and again, because it keeps happening all the time, right? Because they cannot get employed, we still keep thinking that they cannot, that they shouldn't be employed, that they have no experience, that they're kind of the lost generation, hence, they have it's no use employing them because they have none of those benefits that an experienced person has. So we can change that perception by having them actually be in these jobs and other people seeing that they can be there, right? Third thing we say, it's self-perception, right? If you have been looking for a job for 2 years, right, and you cannot find it, the way you look at yourself changes, right? You don't think I'm a really awesome person and I can actually go do this. You probably think that there's no options for me and you give up. Many of these people give up in the end and they just stop looking because they don't think there's any possibilities for them. However, when they see that other people are working, even if it's again in not those ideal circumstances, that self-perception can change and they can see that they can actually be there as well. So yes, we think that it's still better, right? Fourth thing, we think, and this is incredibly important, right? Even if you work in a company with a bad contract, whatever. You get those connections, right? And this is what all those people are often missing. The way you get jobs after university is not, you know, just applying wherever. Very often you get that through actually knowing people. But to know the right people, you have to actually be in the environment. If you've been out of that environment for a long time, you're not going to have the right connections to actually go for the jobs you want, to get to the positions and to know where you're wanted and where your skills are wanted. And that's a huge problem. If you are interacting with those people on a daily basis, all those things are better. Yes?
Don't you think that taking your second point about the people that are thinking that young people are bad at jobs and so on, why should the employee employ for the long time that young people thinking, okay, he's so bad at that job, he will use that person, that young person, 3 months and then go away because that's in the
Look, the way this perception works is because we don't hire them, we don't actually know that they're often very skillful. We think that the perception is not really accurate, right? That these people have finished their universities and very often they are very capable of doing these jobs, you know? But the problem is that we see them in a certain way, which is not exactly the right way, right? But when they're actually in that job and they're actually doing it well, then that perception can change about them being, you know, immature, all those things. We also think that they're going to be greatly incentivized to do extremely well, right? To prove themselves and to stay there. So their incentives are much higher than the usual people. Okay, employers. As already mentioned, employers are not very incentivized to hire youth. Why? Because of stigma, because of experience. It's a huge risk for them to hire these people, and we balance that risk out by lessening the risks inherent in the contracts. We also balance the disproportionate benefits that come from being older and having previous experience. Because the status quo is so cripplingly stagnant, we need to change something. We think the people who now cannot find jobs for 2 years are never going to find jobs just like that if we don't change anything, because no one wants to hire them. If we change that incentive structure, we can get them some experience that will help them get out of this situation. And yes, we understand that our alternative is not perfect, but this situation is worse. Because anything in the situation more or less is better if we get them in those companies to get experience, to get those connections, to really have a chance to prove themselves. We think that we can change this situation that is now crippling our continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I will talk to you about 3 things. The lower wage means poor value. The second thing, is it fair? And the third one, the incentive of the people, of the employers, and the connection between the young people and the country and, well, the self-development. But first of all, a little bit of rebuttal, because a lot of things that Ruta told you is in fact connected with internships. This whole idea of self-perception, of connections that should work if you're going to be employed by the company, in fact should work in internships. But it doesn't, because people are still unemployed. And we do agree that this situation is kind of bad. But in our point of view, the model that the proposition presents to you brings more harms than, in fact, good things. So the first thing that I would like to tell you is less wage means the poor value. In our point of view, if you're going to tell the employers, well, you can propose the young people a very small wage. It means, in fact, that they are going to think, okay, because young people sucks, in fact. Thank you. It means, in fact, that people would get the less responsibility, less cool jobs, and less chances to perform better, to get the more experience, more self-development, to be more value and be more worth in the future for future employers. Because in fact, this proposition would brings the harms like this. People are going to earn 200 euros, and for example, and in our point of view, this situation won't change very quickly, because still they would have a small experience, because no one would get them so much responsibility, and their experience would be very poor. And in fact, thank you, there won't be very very fancy people to employ in the future. Thank you. So this is the first one. And it would also bring the stagnancy of these young people, not self-development, no development of the whole young society, which is so important for our country. The second thing, is it in fact fair to propose people who search for the job a very small wage, instead, for example, for the people who are much older, but they didn't have any experience previously, for example, and we've got the situation that 30-year man, who in fact is not very experienced, thank you, can earn 500 euros, and a guy who has got 21 years old and is searching for the job, he can get only 200 euros. So this is the first thing. And the second thing is, who are we going to create? And we are thinking that young people are very emotional and are very and can be easily distracted by their self-perception and the perception in the eyes of the country. In our point of view, these people would be less connected with this country. We've got a high risk of getting them go, which could, of course, mean less people, less young people, and the whole how economy could get, in fact, worse. And what I would like to tell you more is their being independent, because in our point of view, thank you, these young people who are going to earn this 200 euros are not having chance to go out of the home or being independent or getting some experience. This is some kind of like still not paying internships in our point of view, thank you, and they're being independent, or for example having family, having children, will be even slower than today it is. Here you are.
You're telling us that lowering standards will lower the opportunities for these people to expand their families, to earn high wages and have responsibilities. Compare that, please, to the unemployment that they probably face more likely, and the opportunities that are in that situation.
Well, we do believe that there are other solutions, like, for example, less taxes for employers who are employing young people. There are other ways than proposing young people less money. You can propose to the companies to paying less for the government for employing them, or for example, it could be some law like getting some money for the for the companies who are employing young people. I won't tell you about the other solution, because this is not my role. I need to tell you why this new proposal is getting more harm than good things. So just getting back to my point about this family, in our point of view, these people won't be more independent, more self-experienced, more self-confident. In fact, they would still be with their families. They would go to the work, for example, 40 or 50 hours, because you're telling about, well, not really best standard or simple contracts. In fact, these people who are not very experienced can sign the contract that in fact would make them very, very hard workers, and in the results they won't get any good money, and they would still be with their families and won't be worth for our economy, because if they cannot spend their money on some goods or some services, they're just like fictional employed people. And in our point of view, the number of unemployment is not in fact the most important. The most important thing is how these people who are employed are working for our economy and thus getting any any profits for the country. So just to sum up, I told you about the number of wage means like the value of the employer. The second thing was, is it in fact fair? And the third thing is being self-confident, having experience, and being independent in the world if you're proposing such a poor conditions. Thank you.
For a fine speech, and then we welcome the Deputy Prime Minister here.
So, dear Mrs. Speaker, I'm going to tell you more about why, what problems we are going to resolve by this policy, how the solutions will work much more better than what we are doing now, basically nothing, how we can reduce the exploitation of youth and not get to such kind of situations, and also the benefits not only for the youth as such, but for their families, society, and Europe altogether. But first of all, a bit of a rebuttal. So, the point of internships, we really consider that a full-time job is much more better than, way more better than internships for youth, for young people, for sure. Why? Because when employers, first of all, when employers know that someone is not going to stay for a long time, they never take them seriously. That's the problem. Like, it's the time when they give some paperwork, I don't know, some Excel work or whatever. They don't give them a responsible job. They simply give something that needs to be done and that they don't want to do because it's a one month internship. And there also for internships, as we don't get paid there, usually, most likely, there is an alternative for youth to choose, oh, why should I take an internship if I can simply stay at home and do nothing? When there is an incentive by some kind of money and a long-term perspective on their working, it's way more better than an internship for themselves and their perception of themselves, and then they see at least in the beginning why they should do that, because they see the reward afterwards, and only then they see the gain of all the other things we are going to tell you about later on. And it makes them think in long term. Internships are so short term that it's really not so useful than working. Also, one rebuttal point about the incentives of employees. If we would lower the taxes of employees, it would not have as huge effect as all we propose here, because they would not simply, they would take youth as the employment, like someone who can we employ for lower wages. So someone still who will not do a responsible job, and it would not lead to that result we would be willing to receive. So now to my arguments. What are the what are the problems we see? We see that why young people cannot get the work is like they have lack of experience. They are supposed not to have they don't feel the sense of responsibility simply because they have the lack of experience. They also they don't know how it should be, what's happening if they work. Therefore, by proposing them this possibility of working at least for a longer period of time, we would give them that experience that they can afterwards write in CV, therefore get afterwards in a better job. We need to think in a long term. We cannot see the short-term benefit only, then they also will feel some sense of belonging to the company, not being someone there for a month and then put out and like someone not important at all. Also, yes, please.
Don't you think that in this bad contract they can be easily drop out after a month, and they're in fact floating between a lot of jobs, and they have got no perspective to be in a long term in one job?
No, first of all, the contracts that now are being switched on. Like there are 3 months that the time they are being checked on whether they fit for that work, and it's already much more better than internship, and it's 3 months already, and they get during those 3 months their money. So I don't see the point to why an internship could have been better. And then also it leads to this being in different, like working in different domains for youth reveals whether we like it or not, because one big problem for youth is not only to find a job, but also to find out for themselves what they are willing to do. So being in a company, feeling how it is, feeling what's the domain about, is a bridge in our further future, not only by finding the connections and people working who have experience. They have worked in all kinds of fields, and even if you are working in a logistic company, there might be people that worked before in a bank, and you understand that that is way more better. After having conversations with them, you can go there because they can propose you that possibility, and they will do that only if they will have seen you for a longer period of time, only if they have seen that you are really willing to invest your time. And then we think that young people really show off better during the time because they want to prove themselves. It's much more important for them than the people who have experience and are kind of feel superior to others. But young people don't do it. And also the benefit for family is such that they don't get rid of their children, but they feel that they are more responsible. They don't need to use, they can use less money for them. And the problem also in Europe as such is that the generations are getting way more older, and if we don't put this workforce, the young people, in working, the taxes and all those things are lower, so we cannot support our pensioners. We cannot not do anything of it. So it's really important, even though Europe is getting older, get back those youth that are not doing anything into the workforce. So, thank you for attention.
You guys are so fast. I'm doing my thank you. Thanks to the audio speaker.
I
welcome the nice you already.
I also need some time to make things
Thanks
proper.
to the audio speaker for a fine speech, and we welcome the deputy, I was going to say Prime Minister, but you're the deputy leader of the opposition. Here, here.
Madam Speaker, we also would like to live in the world that when we employ someone, we only want his best, we only want that person to be awesome employed, to have a lot of money and so on. But the first thing is that employees are not the angels. They do not want to be the angel for the employer, especially for the employer that you told us they want to prove themselves. So if we have that motion, we are giving the possibility to the employees that they can fire that people easier than we have it now, easier than other employers. So what they can, and they are in the perfect situation because they have like 10% of people unemployed, so they have a lot of workforce to work. So they are hiring experienced old people to the good, well-paid positions because that's good for them. They will not risk their whole company, and they have that 10% of society that will work like in the motion, 12 hours per day, and they can fire them like after 3 months, after one month, because it's so easy, like in the motion, because it's much easier than we have now. So they will use them. They will use them because it's the best for the company. They have cheap workforce for the low positions in the company to be used. They will make that some things in the company that have to be done for and will not have to say anything about why I will not employ that person more. And the second thing is like you never ask yourself, why do we have the labor law now? We have the labor law now because we are preventing people from being used. We are letting people to work as much as you want, earn as low as you want, unless what? Unless you are used, unless you are not able to be independent, unless you are not able to live on your own, unless you are unable to create a family. So we have a labor law now that let people to create family, to be independent, and to be not used. And when we are lowering that labor law, we are letting people to be used, to earn not enough money to be independent, not enough money to create a family. And when the young people are making the decision to create a family, in the most cases they are not able to come back because they are married, they have kids and so on, because they were employed like one year and then they were just thrown out without any experience, because as I told you, they are only employed on the low positions. So we are creating the huge problems in the society, because people that were okay, I will make something, and even it was hard because they were not so good paid, and maybe it's not so easy to create that family, but sometimes it's possible. They're creating that family and then they are fired and they cannot find that job one more time. So we are creating that workplace only temporary, and that temporary means destroying the whole family, destroying the whole society system that we created. We are not making something permanent, but we're making something temporary. And that's huge social problems, and a lot of problems with getting back to the family and taking care of the children. Second.
Aren't the vast majority of workplace temporary as it is now?
No, it's not now, because maybe even if it's temporary, we're creating the system with that motion that it's more temporary, because it's easier to fire someone. So, no, thank you very much. As we also want to tell you after the second speech, we are not saying to you that internships are the only way to be employed. It's not that way. We are telling you that there are a lot of things that a student can do to be employed, and at the very end I will tell you what the government can make more. Thank you very much. And the another thing we should ask ourselves is why we have unemployment. There are two situations. We have not enough workplaces, and people do not want to work because they are not well paid. A lot of people do not want to work because, okay, it's only 400 euros, I will wait. So when there is not enough workplaces, and I think that motion will not create more workplaces, because if employee has something to be done, he will employ someone. And even if it creates that workplaces, we are shifting the unemployment to another groups, because we are not making the workplaces like creating totally new workplaces, but we are making some place for 2 people, for 10 people throwing out 7 people, because we are only creating some workplace. So we are shifting that unemployment to another, even if your system works, to another groups. We are shifting that unemployment to the not highly educated older people. So that not well educated older people, they will not earn that money. They will have the bad conditions to live, and they will have the problems with the family, because they have already that family created, and they have problems because they have children to feed. They have problems because they have their children that are students that will be not able to work in the free internships, like you are trying to tell us that it's our only case, and they are not able to make young people to be better prepared to the next job. And the second option is that people do not want to work for 400 euros. You are making the system that, okay, they will be paid 300 euros. No, they will not work in that conditions because they already do not want to work in that conditions. So maybe some people now work in that conditions, and giving them 300 of euros are making them unemployed in our country because, okay, I will not work for 300 euros here. So they are going away. They're going away to another country. That's the demographic problem in our country. That's the problem with the changing generations. We are making the gap in the generations, and that's not the solution for our problem. We do not want to send our people out of our country. And the problem with that temporary job is also the fact that people are used, and they are feeling used. They see that someone is working at the same position, and he's earning more, working less, and I can be thrown out of my job in any moment. And what we say, it's better to, in fact, create new workplaces, making factories, making another investments in a better it's a better solution than making some temporary not working workplace. Thank you very much.
So once again, I thank the earlier speaker for his fine speech. Before I welcome the member of government. Here.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. For me, it's an honor to continue this debate. I'll start by first saying that we're currently facing a problem. We're currently facing a vicious cycle not only for youth unemployment, but for the whole European economy. The whole European economy has been stagnant for 5 years now, and we have seen no improvement whatsoever. We have been facing low economic growth. We have been facing problems of aging populations. And we haven't done anything about solving this problem. At the same time, we're not using all the resources that the European economy has. And by depriving the youth unemployment from getting involved in this labor force, we are actually procrastinating this vicious cycle more and more, and we're making the problems even worse. That's why we believe that we should make everything possible in order to get this young labor force involved in the market, to get it stay there, and to make it improve in the future. I'll first start by rebutting a couple of the things that the opposition said. They said that labor law provides social security, and that's why we have it. And by reducing standards, we're actually removing, we're getting rid of social security. Well, let's say that, social security, but who pays for this social security? The labor force pays for this social security. And what actually happens currently is that, as explained by the opening government, the young labor force is getting further and further disengaged from working. And when they get disengaged, they won't work, they won't contribute well, even when they get older. In other words, we won't have the means to support the social security, which we currently have. For this reason, just by defending the status quo, the opposition is actually dooming us to a worse future than the government is proposing you. They again said that people were not independent, but young people wouldn't be independent when they are offered lower wages. Well, sure, but are they more independent when they have no wages whatsoever? Of course not. And what's more important to say here is that everyone starts at a lower wage. You cannot expect to earn at the 20 years the wage of a 40 years old guy. You need to get this experience. You need to get the knowledge you need to grow through your career path in order to be able to contribute more to society, in order to be able to earn more money for yourself, for your family, and for the economy as a whole. These young labor force won't move the whole economy now, but they are the force that will get us out of the crisis, the force that will keep Europe standing in the long run, and that's what we care for and we are fighting for. Then another note that the opposition mentioned in their last speech was concerning the demographic problems and immigration problems. Yes, there are these demographic problems, and that's why we are actually offering this solution to get people to be working where there are areas with high unemployment rate. We don't want these people to be leaving their places, and by introducing our laws, we are making these people stay where they are. We are not incentivizing them to go for Germany or to go somewhere in big cities where they think that they will find a job, but very often they actually don't. We think that by defending the status quo, they are actually again worsening the situation.
Question.
Yes, please.
How can they stay in the country if they're earning so little money they cannot, in fact, live on their own? They want to go away.
They are leaving the country because they don't have an income whatsoever, because they don't have a job. When we lower the standards, they will at least earn something, and they'll have this start and being able to they'll have this opportunity to grow and to get involved in the labor force and like eventually earn more. They wouldn't just run away. They wouldn't just look for other opportunities, because everyone wants to be where he or she is born, but people are made to leave their places because of such economic hardships. And by offering our these lowered labor standards, we are combating this problem as well. Then another thing I want to say is last but not least, we by getting people involved in the labor force earlier, we are actually making them more active citizens, EU citizens, because people who are employed, people who pay taxes, people who are directly affected by policies, are more politically active, are more active citizens, and do care more about what the country is doing, do care more about things happening. So for these reasons, in order to sum up, we believe the opening government did a great job for explaining why youth should be empowered in order to get more involved. But we believe that this is even more important, and for making the whole economy work in the long run, we do contribute by saying that by introducing these laws, we are actually combating discrepancies between economic regions by saying that we need to make those changes, because if we don't, we risk making the situation much worse, getting rid of our social security, and getting people more and more disengaged from the labor force, from the political system, and the functioning of the country as a whole. For these reasons, I thank you, and I beg you to propose.
Then we thank, as always, the last speaker for his fine speech, and then we welcome the member of the opposition. Hear, hear.
Okay. The opposition is against lowering the labor standards, mainly because there's something that has been forgotten and has not really been mentioned in the former debate, and that's the people. We're not only talking about money, we're not only talking about the economic situation, but also about the people who must live in this economic situation. So we are against this reduction of the rights, which is this labor standards lowering because it leads to precariousness. Let's look at an example. Let's look at what happens when these standards are lowered. An example that we all know is Germany. In Germany, in 2003, there was a labor reform which ended up in the mini-jobs, in the creation of mini-jobs. You all know what mini-jobs are. These are jobs in which people don't have a minimum wage. They work for very few hours, and they don't even contribute. So that leads us to our second argument. This is a fictional economic improvement because it does not lead to long-term solutions. These people don't contribute, they don't help to maintain the net, the national security net, and so it's fictitious. We are hiding the real problem, which is people's poverty, behind a fictional national prosperity curtain. So we pretend that the country is rich. And why do we want a rich country? We have poor people. The mini-jobs what made was a radicalization of the richness distribution. Poor people became poorer and rich people became richer. That doesn't really help. That's not what we want. Again, what we need is people to work. What the government said was that they want people to enter the labor market. That's okay. They want people to get experience. That's fantastic. Thank you. But we want people to get experience in their own field. And this kind of precariousness, this kind of labor lowering, thank you. Yes, please?
How do you make poor people richer? How do you give them experience?
Not by reducing labor standards.
But how?
What we offer is, let me explain you. Our proposal is not reducing the current standards, but offering a new opportunity. The real problem is that there are no job offers. So what we propose is to make it easier for people to create their own job. For example, there's the Mondial Bank each year gives a list of countries and gives them a score depending on how easy it is for people to start a new enterprise. And Greece and Spain, as you know, are countries with incredible rates of youth unemployment. These countries got a really low score. That means that people can't either work for another person and can't, thank you, and can't work for themselves because they can't even create their own initiative, their own enterprise. So what we propose is not lowering standards, but being able to create one's own job if there are no other jobs. That's a much better proposal, we think. Moreover, as I said, that's not a solution but a patch, because obviously if you create this kind of mini-jobs, this kind of temporary jobs, the unemployment rates will lower. That's a fact, okay. But what will happen in the end? When these people have not contributed to the national economy, what will happen when the current active population retires? Who will pay for their retirement? And what about these people getting mini-jobs which are not related to their field? You talked, the opening government talked about educated people who can't get experience because they can't even access a job. But the jobs that they would have access through this kind of reforms would not guarantee them an opportunity to work in their own field, because the experience tells us that mini-jobs are not often offered by big companies, but by other companies. Yes, please.
Don't you think that after gaining that experience, we have it input in our CV, and then employers look at us completely differently? We are not a young, unemployed youth who hasn't ever worked.
I will answer through another question. Do you think that it's really useful for me, if I want to become a researcher, to have worked as a waitress a lot of times for 2 years?
Madam.
Does it really help? I'm not sure. Thank you. What I mean is that we need people to work in their own fields, and that this kind of reforms don't really help people being able to work in that. It doesn't help with their experience. Yes, please?
Why would you hire people for mini jobs and then fire them? If they are cheaper in the long term because of these reforms we propose, probably you would want to actually train them, keep them.
So do you want people to chronically live through mini jobs? Do you really know what you're saying? You mean you want people to live their whole lives getting 400 euros income per month?
Madam.
No, thanks. It's not a solution. It's not a definitive solution, mini jobs. In Germany, currently, there's 25% active population working on mini jobs. That's terrible, and that's not the demographic profile we want.
Just
Yes?
point of information, what is mini job? It's a new.
A mini job
Yeah.
is a job in which you don't have a minimum wage, in which you can work at maximum 12 hours per week, and in which you don't contribute to the social net security.
We are not talking about that. We are talking about long-term.
That's what happens when this kind. That's what happens when this kind of reference are taken. It happened in Germany. They did exactly what here said. The examples of lowering the hiring and firing requisites, the non-minimum wage requirements. So we have a real example. We see what happens, and we don't want that. Moreover, in Germany, they will be paying the price of their current economical situation some years after now, when they don't have enough money to pay for the retirement and for the social security. So let's review what we have said. We said that we don't want to lower the labor standards because it leads to precariousness, and we are not only talking about economy but about the people that must live in this economy. We don't want them to live precariously in a really rich country, because what's a country if not its people? We don't want this kind of radicalization of a country's richness. We want a real improvement, and we want people to be able to fight against this being used, as our fellows from the opposition said. We want them to be able to create their jobs if there are no job offers, which is the real problem, and that's the reason we oppose this lowering the labor standards. Thank you very much.
Okay, then we welcome the summary speaker for the web speech on the government side to sum up this debate for us. Here, there.
Thank you. Just a second, please.
Whenever you're ready.
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Senk Chanov, and I will be the government whip in this debate. First, I will start with offering rebuttal to some of the points raised by the speaker of the opposing opposition. First of all, I would like to talk about the thing they called their second argument, although I couldn't catch their first argument, namely that the solutions we are offering are actually fictional economic solutions. They claim that people's poverty is more important, and we do not want actually discrepancies. Here we agree that we do not want discrepancies between rich and poor people. However, as it was very clearly shown by previous speakers in this debate, people who are actually, young people who are now unemployed do not have many other options to work. So the only way to actually eradicate these discrepancies is to give them some options to work, even if it's below minimum wage, longer hours, short hours, whatever, as pointed out in the definition of this debate. The opposition claimed that we should not hide the people's poverty, not into behind the larger problem of the failing economy of the European Union. However, people's poverty is often a function of these economic problems. For example, countries that are much better well off financially often can afford to pay higher social security and to support older people and so on and so on. So if you have better economy, it is much easier for people, even who could not find jobs after removing these discrepancies and these restrictions, to be well off. You also claimed, the opposition also claimed that people should get experience in their own field, but also, as it was also pointed out by previous speakers in this debate, it is very, very hard to get experience in your own field if you have none at all before that. So it is actually possible to give employers the incentive to, of course by lowering, for example, the minimum wage, incentive to hire more people so that they can gain their experience in their own field. We do not you will not only not think to get jobs, get the possibility for getting well-paid jobs outside your field. You also get the possibility to get this job in your own field. You claimed, opposition claimed that it should be made easier for people to create their own jobs. And you said, opposition said, and I quote, "The problem is that there are no jobs proposals." However, as I just pointed out, if you lower the minimum wage or increase the working hours, the employer has more incentive to seek people to work for him for better conditions for the employer, and therefore better conditions for the employee who would otherwise not have found a job. You also gave an example about mini jobs, but again, as clearly shown by previous speakers in this debate, these are not the only kinds of jobs that you will have the chance to work if we lower the requirements. For example, you can remove the requirements for maximum working hours per week, and this is exactly the opposite of the mini job. So this is actually an example that does not cover the entire premise of this debate. I will move on to several other points raised by yes.
Previously, to your extension, why the EU young citizens should be grateful for your proposal of getting less money for more hours of their working?
Because otherwise they'll get no money for no hours of work. Moving on. Actually, you only added that the economy is its people, and as already pointed out, also the people are very, very dependent on the economy of this country. You actually, now I move on to summarizing this debate by summarizing first briefly the upper house of the debate. It was actually a debate where the government took the stance of actually improving even a little, whatever is possible, the situation of the unemployed youth in certain areas. While the opposition raised a very peculiar issue, actually they defended the stagnation that is now and the status quo, and actually gave one of their main arguments was actually the issue of family, but actually all three speakers of the government so far have pointed out that you cannot raise a family if you are unemployed, and it's better to work part-time jobs, longer hours or whatever to raise a family. It is still better than the stagnation. However, I would like to point out that this, however true, was not the main problem of this debate, which was actually our extension, namely that lowering labor standards is not only for the people or for the youth, but also to protect the social security and the whole economic system of the European Union and incentivize EU economy, because this actually would solve all other problems. Actually, the opposition did not really comment on our extension, while their extension, as already pointed out by me, is not really important because it can be solved by what we proposed in the upper house, in the lower house, which was why we should do it, and the more important reason why we should do it. The opening government gave a reason that was valid, that was well defended by them and supported by the first speaker of the opening government. However, the closing government, I'm sorry. However, the closing government clearly showed that we should use our resources to incentivize the whole economy. As in this debate, actually incentivized it in this specific case, because if we incentivize the whole economy, we can actually get more people to work, raise the security status, and so on and so on. Thank you very much.
I'm going to close this debate. All that has been said about the government proposal of lowering the conditions of jobs.
they have started talking about there were no alternatives. They had checked all the options and they thought the best was lowering the conditions. And despite when we talked about mini jobs, they didn't know what we were talking about. So our government that had checked all the options didn't know the option we were proposing as opposition. They also talked about this measure could help to lower the risk that the businessman had, and it would also help to create connections for people that did not have jobs, and that would help to move economy. How, we ask, how this can help if there are actually no job places. Then the opposition talked about how lowering wages created poor value, how the workers would feel that they had no value at all if they had low wage. They talk about this measure being absolutely unfair, and they talk about also young people having not independence at all, not having any chance to progress in their life. They appealed also to a demographic and very important argument. How can this measure help the country if our young forces, our young people are leaving? We talk about people all the time. The government made a point of information, another one that I will not take now. They made a point of information saying, okay, yes, you're proposing to not take this measure, then what shall we do? And they said, well, we're not proposing alternative, but we could, for starters, lower the taxes for the businessmen. Well, we have proposed measures. We have proposed alternatives, such as the one to make easier to create enterprises. My colleague talked about how the ranks that the World Bank makes on how easy it is to create enterprises. Greece and Spain, the two same countries that they appealed to were the lower ones. Yes?
How are any of your proposals of taxes or lowering barriers for making businesses mutually exclusive with our plan?
We talked about precariousness. Your plan talks about precariousness. It doesn't help. It doesn't help to the growth of the country. We talked about measures that will help to the country to grow without making people poor, which is what you have done, which is what you're proposing. We talked about why do we want great, rich countries with poor people? Why should we accept that when there are other alternatives that our government did not consider? Yes.
Where would young people get capital to start their business, and don't you agree that actually they would be even more miserable at the beginning stage of starting a business if they ever succeed to start?
Disagree completely. Disagree completely. We should invest. We should help people. There's other ways. Instead of investing on making poor conditions, there are other ways of helping people, creative minds. It's as easy as that. I guess you know all, for example, examples as the game 2045, a game created by an Italian guy that now he's getting richer and richer just because one day he sat in front of a computer. What capital did he need to create that? And now he's making profit. We must help people to create enterprises. Not anymore, thank you. So, we talk about precariousness, how this measure led to precariousness and to poor people in a rich country, why it's the purpose of it. Second, we talked especially about contributions, how contributions are going to be paid, how we can help to the future, how are we going to maintain the standards for example, retired people that has diseases, how are we going to help them if we have jobs with very low wages and so there are no absolutely at all contributions? And how, if they are not making contributions to the state, are we going to help these people when they are retired? And they also say, oh well, but if there's no job, there's no way we can have these contributions. Please, there's not going to be any contributions. Well, we said, let's help people to create enterprises. And that has been our third main point, creating jobs, helping people to be entrepreneurships. That would help to what they say, oh, but if people didn't get a job, they won't have self-esteem, they won't feel responsible, they will be depressed. Okay, let's help them to create an enterprise, and they won't feel all of this because they will feel that they have the power to create, they have the power to give things to their own country. Yes.
Not having enough jobs is not the only problem. The jobs that you have and those you will create are disproportionately occupied by older people, people who are not part of the youth. That's why our plan works and yours doesn't, because your enterprises will still hire the people who have
Your
experience.
plan hasn't said anything about retiring older people. Hasn't said anything about it. If you want to get people out of the market, then do something about that. But don't make the conditions lower. Don't make people poor, because that doesn't help at all the system. So that's why the opposition has said once and over and again and again and again, your measure will not work at all. It will not work because it's not fair, as the opposing opposition said. It's not. It makes the people, the workers, feel they don't have value and they will not be able to be independent. And especially, it will make our country richer, but with poor people, precariousness, contributions. There will be no way to have contributions to keep all these people, to maintain their lifestyle, and it doesn't help to create jobs. That's our main proposal. We have to create jobs. We have to promote entrepreneurship, not making people poor. Thank you very much.
I thank you all for the fine debate. I'd ask you all to cross over, shake hands, thank each other for a great debate. And if you go out, then we'll adjudicate and we'll call you back in when we're done with our call.
Yes.
That's my alarm to stop.